We want to say thank you for listening. So our sponsors have given some great deals in this episode. Check these out. This episode of the Real ResQ podcast is brought to you by Breeze Eastern, the world's only dedicated helicopter hoist and winch provider. Axness, because when lives are at stake and conditions are challenging, clear communication is of the utmost importance. And SR3 Rescue Concepts, because you don't know what you don't know. Breeze Eastern, they dedicate themselves to our helicopter rescue world. Since the very first helicopter rescue in November of 1945, Breeze Eastern has designed and manufactured superior rescue hoist solutions. While much of the technology and the unique mission requirements have changed over the past 75 years, their commitment to the rescuers, the operators, and those being rescued has not. Contact them today by visiting them at breeze-eastern.com. The Axness PNG wireless ICS system can bring cutting-edge wireless intercommunication system technology to any aircraft. The PNG system can be fully integrated into an existing ICS system or can be carried on and off as a mobile base station. They can go anywhere at any time on any aircraft. Plus, with the strongest and most robust waterproofed handheld on the market, this system can take a hit and keep working. Their wireless intercom systems are designed to enhance situational awareness through improved communication capability. This system brings superior noise canceling technology to eliminate rotor wash and engine noise from your ICS. The Axness PNG wireless system is currently deployed in more than 1,800 public safety, air ambulance, and search and rescue aircrafts worldwide. I have personally used the Axness system in 4 different countries and on 5 different airframes. It is awesome. If you want more information, contact them today at axness.com. That's AXNES.com. You just make sure you tell them Quinny sent me. And SR3 ResQ Concepts is a training company that can help with your helicopter training, a standardization and safety check, or maybe just an audit or an FAA refresher. They are here to bring your agency up to date with the most current techniques, rules, regulations, and equipment. The training staff is awesome. With a certified flight instructor pilots, experienced crew members, which I am happy to say that I am one of them, they offer training in rescue, medical, tactical, firefighting, ground operations, and night vision goggle use. SR3 is also partnered with Petzl to assist with personal protective equipment and the highly specific Lazard. SR3 also goes beyond the helicopter world as they provide high-angle rescue training and tactical medicine training. Contact them today at sr3rescueconcepts.com or over on Instagram at SR3_rescue. Coming up next, we've got a guy coming back for round 2. That's right, 100 episodes later, he has returned. Please welcome United States Coast Guard rescue swimmer number 39, Mr. Steve Hathaway. My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard rescue swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Real ResQ. Woo woo. So I've got a repeat customer, repeat guest, repeat, let's see, victim? I might call you a victim at this point. Come on, Steve.
No way. He said, no, this is great. I wouldn't be doing it if it was a victim.
Yeah, right?
I'm not as dumb as I look.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Steve Hathaway, United States Coast Guard rescue swimmer number 39. He came on earlier. It was episode 6. If you haven't listened to that, go back and just listen to that one again. It was a great case. And you were the very first rescue swimmer to deploy in Alaska for a rescue. And we got it.
That's right. Yeah.
Love it. Now,
Old
in our
timer.
conversation there, yeah, a long time ago. Well, no, just a minute ago. Just a minute.
It
But
seems like it, yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
in our conversation, you would ask me like, "Oh, do you want to hear about the one in out of Cape Cod or Savannah or Hawaii and all these other ones?" And I'm like, "No." And now I want yes. So boom. Welcome back, Steve. How are you, brother?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great.
Well,
So
I'm all about you starting wherever you want. Again, if everybody wants to hear the beginning of your life and how you got into it, man, go listen to episode 6. Until then,
yeah, I'm not gonna go way back there again, you know.
nope.
I was, I was born a poor. No, I ain't. I'm not gonna do that.
Oh my gosh. All I know is you have some
But
other cases that you guys back in the day, you guys didn't get awards. Like it was, I'm gonna call us almost like the Finnish border guard. You don't get awards for doing your job. You just go out and do your job. That was
it did. I mean, yeah, we didn't. You know, like I heard one of your episodes talk about Jeff Tunks breaking the seal. You know, finally getting recognition and stuff. But it took a while. They're just like, I got to tell you something. A lot of our pilots were Vietnam era pilots. These, I'm not kidding. We had a lot of our ex-Army that either were warrant officers or officers that flew in Vietnam that were flying Hueys and dropping down into hot zones, picking up, soldiers and bringing them back. I mean, and then, here we are jumping in the water and grabbing somebody. They're like, that ain't, we had Commander Meade in Hawaii. He was an ex-Army guy. This guy
okay.
he was a really good pilot, and he's ex-Army. And I remember seeing him in his dress uniform, and he had an air medal. And I kind of looked at it, and I said, "Oh, cool, he's got it." And then I looked at it real close, and I'm like, "He's got a 12 on it." It was like his 12. He had 12 air medals, and I mean, he did like 3 tours of Vietnam. Man, he used to land in the rivers and take buckets of water and just wash out all the blood, and then they go and pick up wounded in the hot zones and stuff. And I'm like, okay, I get it. See,
Yeah.
but you would have these pilots like in Sitka, and they'd take off, and we'd be on a clear day, which wasn't very often, but on a clear day when there's really, they could fly across the mountain instead of following the passes. Could fly across the passes. I mean, through the mountains and stuff, and they'd be down there at treetop level, man. And we're just like, God, don't have a Vietnam flashback. Don't have a Vietnam flashback. And man, they just be screaming at treetop, and you're just sitting there, But I'll tell you what, man, those guys could fly. Those guys could fly. You always felt good about it. There was a medevac in Sitka, and one of the ex-Army guys and stuff, and this guy had a dislocated shoulder. No big deal. It was just a medevac, and I was going to jump out and go get the guy and bring him over, and we're going to put him in the helicopter because they had him laid out. And it was on the top of this mountain. I mean, when I say top, in Sitka, the mountains are really steep. And at the very top, there's peaks. And so the pilot comes in. I said, "You going to hoist me down?" He's like, "Oh, no, I'm going to land it." And we're all looking at each other like, "You're going to land it? There's no flat. It's a peak." He comes in out of H3, comes over the mountain on the peak, comes over it and sets the 2 landing gear on the peak, and the nose gear is over the mountain. Like, you're like, holy shit. And I jump out and I run over. I keep looking back going, geez, I wish I had a picture. I would have stopped and taken the picture, man. The guy had a dislocated shoulder. He could have waited a little long. I would turn around and took a picture. It was so I get him, and I put his arm in a sling, and then brought him back. And it wasn't just a dislocated shoulder. It was pretty bad. He had fallen and really wrecked himself,
Okay.
And but he wasn't going to be able to climb down the mountain, because it was up pretty high. They were up there hunting. And but anyways, we met about, but I just couldn't believe that. I mean, he just sat there with the back wheels on top of this, and I'm like, God, these guys are freaking good, man. Like, we were lucky,
That's
to have
awesome.
some guys like that. Yeah, but like I said, when we talked, we talked mostly about Sitka and how the program got started, and we were the new guys and what we had to do to get this thing rolling, and we had to win over the pilots and the crew and everybody, and it was pretty successful doing that. But there were some other cases in Sitka that were. I mean, we we flew a lot of SAR. There wasn't a whole lot of us, so we got to do a lot. You look at a lot of. I look at a lot of these stations down. They have a lot of rescue swimmers. So in order, your duty day, you probably don't stand every fourth day duty. I don't know. Maybe they do, but we were every fourth day, every third day. So we were able to get a lot of SAR. But I wrote a few down, and one of the ones I want to talk about is, and some of these aren't real hairy that you're gonna go, oh my god. But one time
wait, real quick, because that's the greatest part about this is like they don't have to always be like that.
I know
they're great memories of a great rescue. In one way or aspect or another, they just stand out to all of us. Love it.
Some of these are just unique. I just I love to. One time we're all standing duty in Sitka, and we're up in the duty room watching TV, and it was in the evening and stuff. And then we hear the SAR alarm go off, and we're like, okay. And when you hear the SAR alarm go off, you wait a second to hear, what it is, so you know how to prepare for it. And it went off, and it said we had a 2-car pileup. I think it was in Angoon. And in Sitka, we did a lot of medevacs because there's a lot of Indian villages, Aleut, a bunch of Indian villages around, and we supported them. We did all their medevacs and stuff when they, anyone got hurt or did anything. And there was a 2-car pileup, and it came over and said, SAR, 2-car pileup in Angoon. And we're all looking at each other. And we knew in Angoon, everyone drove 3-wheelers, and there were only 2 cars in Angoon. I mean, there was a public safety officer had a truck, and some other guy had a beat up car that, they didn't have any roads. It was all 3-wheelers, it was a village. Yeah. And we're like 2-car pilot. I said, somebody is in trouble. Someone's screwing around with, that's kind of dumb to, hit the SAR alarm and say that. Pilots are trying to be funny or something. We're like, what the heck? And we're sitting there going, that's pretty funny. 2-car pile up in Angoon, that's pretty funny. And all of a sudden we look out the window and we see the pilots running down to the hangar, and we're like, oh shit. So we run down and we're like, hey, what's going on? And I said, well, they had been partying on Angoon. In the villages in Alaska, they're not allowed to have liquor.
Okay.
They're not allowed to because 2-car pilots have it. And I guess they'd all been drinking.
The only 2-car pilot.
The only 2 cars who had been drinking. Everyone was loaded in, everyone had loaded in the back of the truck and loaded in the car, and they were racing down the main drag and crashed. And then there was, all these people were hurt and stuff. And we're like, holy crap, man, 2-car pileup. It was like, geez. We got there, though. There was a lot of people that we made them back to Sitka. Sitka had a public health service hospital there for the Indians. They also had a school, for all the villages to send their kids to. But Sitka was kind of cool. It had a big hospital for all the native Alaskans and stuff. So we brought them back, but we just thought that was, it was one of those things I thought was funny. 2-car pileup. I was like, Jesus.
Just out of curiosity, when you landed, did you see the cars like on the sides or?
No. We always land, like, usually where we land is not really near the village. They usually have a ball field or somewhere out away, and then we have to. So that brings up another one that in another village. I got to tell you about this guy. He was a corpsman. His name was Johnny Midget. Really good friend of mine. But he was one of the best corpsmen ever. This guy was amazing. And but he's funny. He's a old country boy from North Carolina. His name's Midget. That's huge in North Carolina. His Coast Guard lineage is unbelievable. But he was a cool, just old country guy. He had to fly. And it was kind of cool in the H3 because we could bring corpsmen with us as medics. And I loved it, man, because as soon as you got the guy in the plane, you're like, all yours, It was awesome.
Yeah.
And but Johnny, he never really, he was a corpsman, but he didn't really think about he was ever going to be flying SAR in Alaska. He was like, he was little, he wasn't like a swimmer. He's like, let me go. He's like, really? We're going out in that? And I was like, come on, Johnny. And he's like, oh, man. So one time, Johnny had duty, and we land in a village, and some guy had shot him, got shot or shot him or something like that, and it was really, it was real important that we got there, quickly. So we landed in the ball field, and the public, the truck comes out with the public safety officer. He comes screaming out, and he's coming towards the helicopter, and we're like, stop, stop, like, don't go under the rotor blades, just stop, and the guy comes screaming in and stops. And not only did we take the corpsman, but the doc would go with us too on a lot of medevacs if it was something like this. So we brought the doctor along too, because we had a PHS doctor, Dr. French. He was really good.
Nice.
And so we get those two, and they had all this gear. They knew they had a gunshot, so they brought a whole bunch of stuff. And we're loading it in the back of the truck, and they told them, jump in. So they jump in the back of the truck, and I remember standing there watching them drive away, and we kept the rotors turning and stuff, and they're hauling ass. And I remember Johnny on the back of the truck just going, ah! This guy's just doing fishtails, he's going so fast. They hit a dog, and the dog goes rolling off, off into the side, but he ran off. They hit a dog, but he ran off, so he didn't get killed or anything. But Johnny's just like, God dang, man, what the hell? But and then I got another. I tell you, there was another case with Johnny. I was on with him, and this one wasn't as cool. But we were looking for a plane crash, and we're been flying up in the mountains. This plane reported overdue, and we're searching. Johnny's sitting in the jump seat. So at H3, it has a pilot and co-pilot seat, and in the middle, through the pass-through, they had a seat that would lower down. You could sit in the jump seat and look out the front, and I'm in the back and the flight mech, and we had regular crew, and Johnny was the one to spot the airplane. It was a little dot in the mountain, and he goes, "Hey, what's that over there?" And they're like, "Oh, there it is." So we go over way up in the mountains, and we go, okay, we need checks for survivors. So we're like, okay, I thought maybe they're going to send me out, but they're like, hey, Johnny, you need to go over and see if there's anyone alive. And Johnny looks at me like, man, really? Yeah. I'm like, go on, man, don't worry. I said, and then the pilot tells him, don't worry, we're going to do circles and check for bears. And Johnny's like, God dang, man. So he gets out, and we take off. And I'm sitting in the door. I have my gunner's mitt out. I'm sitting in the door because, man, I did that whenever I could, sit in the door. And I remember him looking up to me, and I'm like,
just waving, hey, buddy.
So he hikes over, and the plane had stalled or something, and it came down, and it hit a rock, and it was stuck, like nose down, And Johnny goes over, and he radios back. Yeah, he said, yeah, these guys, they're definitely two guys, and he said they're definitely deceased. They're not, and so, and pilot comes back. He says, okay, well, we fly around. We said, we'll come back to that spot, because you had to hike down to the spot where we could land the helicopter, And the thing was, it was so mushy. The pilot had to keep, couldn't land because the wheels were starting to sink in the mud, and so we went back over, and the pilot says, okay, man, we need to get these guys. And I'm like, really? And so like, Steve, you need to, you're going to have to, and Johnny says, I don't know, I can't do that by myself. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I get out and I actually bring the avionics with me too. I said, man, three's better. Let's bring another guy. And so in the H3, you had the avionics man, a flight mech. So the avionics man, he did the navigating and radios, but the pilots were going to handle radio. So we got all of us, and we went over, and the plane was sitting actually on a rock, nosed on a rock. So it was kind of wobbly. So I ran back and grabbed the trail line, tied it onto the tail, and went over and tied it around a rock so it wouldn't flip over and go down the hill, And then we started. Oh man, it was. I don't really want to go into details, but we got him out finally. It wasn't pretty,
man.
And we got him out. 2 body bags, put them in the body bags, and then we're like, okay, let's go get the litter. We're going to drag them over to the airplane. But then the state troopers called and said, no, leave the bodies there. We got to come do a crash investigation, and we're going to pick them up. We're like, we got them out already. They're in body bags. Nope, take them out. Leave them there. And we're like, okay. So we left them there, and we flew away. And we're like, on the way out, the pilot's going, look, man, we could have had him in Juneau in 10 minutes. I said, do you have a helicopter on the way? And I said, no, we're gonna come out in the morning. And we're like, what the F? And at the whole time, there was an airplane circling, and it was his wife and family. They were out searching too, because they had friends that had it. On Alaska, everyone has pilot license.
Yeah.
And they heard all this going on, and they, I'm like, I can't believe we got to leave these guys, but I mean, when we were in there trying to get these guys out, Johnny's like, looked at him, he looked at me. I said, oh my God, it was something else, man. But the guy was a rock star. He was a rock star. He was, like I said, you don't get anything for getting guys, they're deceased and stuff.
Yeah, so definitely not. No. But what's interesting is like leaving the guys on scene like that, or leaving the bodies there. First thing I'm thinking about is they're not going to be there in the morning. The bears are coming.
I know exactly what we thought, and that's what we were thinking when we got to the plane. Is like
they'll be gone.
I don't want to.
Yeah, no.
You have a certain smell when death, and you know what I'm talking about, and that's why we had the third guy. He was, and then the helicopter was circling us the whole time, going, we'll come down, scare away any bears or something. And I'm like, yeah, right. Yeah. So, yeah, that was funny. But that was my dealings with Johnny and there was times too where he came back one time and he was with another swimmer, but they had picked up a guy that. The thing about Sitka was you knew everybody in town. If you'd been there a little while, you knew everybody, and then you'd go pick up guys that were, a lot of hunters. We were the only show in town. So not only did we do ocean rescue, we did inland, plane crashes and hunters that, the principal of the elementary school had a heart attack. And,
oh, wow.
I mean, you bring him, and that's why I say Johnny was in the airplane doing CPR on him, and I jumped in, and Johnny would just sweat. He would, had been doing CPR, and I wasn't on the crew or anything. I met the plane when it came in, and when I jumped on board, I said, I pushed him out of the way, and then I took over compressions because he was spent, because you've done CPR before. You get,
oh yeah,
if you're doing it right, you get tired.
It worked.
So
yeah.
And there was some other stuff in Sitka. We did medevacs, canneries. There was one of the saddest ones was we took Dr. French and we went to the cannery. There's some guy had been working in the cannery and he pulled the boiling water on him and he had been burned pretty much his whole. Yeah, it wasn't good. Young kid, and a lot of the cannery workers were college students who would come up and earn the money to pay for their college. In Oregon and stuff in Washington, put them in the airplane. We're going back, and I went back, and we had them all in the litter and stuff, and wrapped up and stuff. And he was just talking to me like, "Oh yeah, I come up here, and I'm like, yeah, man, this guy's really talking and stuff. And I went up there and I talked, and Dr. French was up there, and I think, oh, he's doing really good, and stuff. He's not, he told me he's from Oregon and this, that, and other thing, and all this stuff. And the doc looked at me and goes, yeah, he's not going to make it. And oh man, that was like, dude,
wow.
Like, what? Yeah, because he had been burnt. They're like, he's been burned too much. He's probably not going to make it, and I don't think he did. So we had some really sad stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
he had
that's
to deal
tough.
with, and just saying, you go back there, you're talking to the guy, and just you kind of make a tiny little connection, and then you find that out, and it's like, man.
Yeah, that's
go
tough.
home. And then, there was
another tough part about that is like when you said you make that connection, and then you're hoping for the best because you've done everything you could to get them to a higher care of health, and hope that something comes out, and next thing you know, you hear it's like infection comes over the body, or something that just the
Right.
body can't recover from, and then they end up passing away, and you're like, oh
I think
man.
I think it's a little better sometimes when you don't have the. I mean, it was really great to bring a doctor. He loved doing SAR cases. He would come in for anything, and I loved it. But
Awesome.
a lot of times when you go and you're just the EMT and stuff, you don't know what the you don't know what it's going to be. But when you have that doctor,
Right.
it's like, God dang, man. So
Yeah.
and I had a guy one time that their boat hit a log. One of the they used to do a lot of logging, and the logs would be in the water, and they hit it and they sunk really fast. And I thought it was kind of cool. We had to. There were, I don't know, like 3 or 4 survivors, and I went down and got them in the water. And it, like I said, it's not a big get. It was in the in this it wasn't offshore or anything, no big waves or anything. I just went down and got him, and one guy was deceased, brought him up, but I was like, he's butt naked, and the captain goes, dude, when we hit that log, the boat just turned right over. He says we were upside down and sunk in probably 2 minutes. He says it was
Wow.
unbelievable because they had forward momentum, and when the
Yeah.
log pierced the hull, they still had the forward momentum, so it rushed that water, in, and they became unstable and turned right over. And what I was treating the captain for, his arm was all cut up, but when he was upside down in the boat underwater, he had to punch his way out of the pilot house. He had to punch
Oh,
the window
no
out
way.
because he couldn't find the door, and he was holding on to, I guess, to the wheel, and he punched through the glass, and then he swam out. And then 2 of his other crewmen were, they had made it out because they were on deck or something. But one guy was down below, and he had washed out too. But I guess was taking a shower or doing something. He was.
Yeah.
But I'm like, hey, this guy's butt naked. But I mean, we went and got them. That's kind of stuff you would do. You just cases that you would do. And just go and I got to tell you one though. In Cordova,
Damn,
we used
Steve.
to deploy. Well, no, I mean, this is the way it was, man. When you're 1 and 3
Yeah.
duty, dude, and when you're the only show in town, you're doing a lot of SAR. And we went to Cordova, and
Love
I was,
Cordova, by the way. Love it.
yeah. Oh no, isn't that fun? On your day off, you go get to
Oh,
hike on glaciers. You go over to the
yes.
bridge. The bridge,
Yes.
and you shoot your guns in the air trying to make the glacier calf, drop. I was like,
No, what are
it's a
you
fun.
talking about?
Oh, you weren't allowed. You weren't allowed to do that because we all
I
had
don't know what,
guns, dude. We was
I don't
like,
know what you're talking about.
you go anywhere in Alaska, people are like, you got a gun? Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you,
Woo, woo,
44,
woo.
38? And we
Yeah,
go
we
down
would
to the
absolutely do
bridge,
that.
where the glacier comes down, and we'd
Yeah.
just be shooting the glacier, watching the ice come up and stuff, and everything. It was pretty cool, man. But Cordova was a cool place. But this is a
Loved
good
it.
story. This is a good
All right.
story. So I was a flight mech actually on this. Okay, I wasn't the swimmer because the swimmer program, we weren't sending swimmers to Cordova yet. So
Okay.
I went there as the flight mech on a deployment, and so how you go into town, and there's one club called, I think it was called the club or the bar or something like
I think
that.
so. Yeah.
I think it was, well, back then it might be different now, but it was called the club. And we go in there and they'd have a little band. In Cordova, it's not big at all. It's really
No,
small.
it is a tiny town. There's one road in, one road
Tiny
out,
town.
or the boat.
Yeah.
You take the boat in.
That,
And the
that's
only
it.
reason the road was there is to get to the airport.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
So
So anyway, so we went in, and one of the guys was talking with the band and kind of befriended them and stuff, and it's boring there. So then the band had the day off. He goes, hey, tomorrow, once you come out, I'll give you a tour of the Coast Guard base. We'll show you what we do out there and everything. And the band's like, yeah, man, they got nothing to do, anything for them. It's like, yeah. So the next day I have duty, and we're doing our stuff, and all of a sudden these guys from the band show up, and we're like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, oh yeah, man, this is cool. And we were showing them we had them in the helicopter, showing them everything. They were real interested. The alarm goes off. It's like, boop, 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 Mayday from, whatever. And so we jump in, do our thing, take off. Well, they got to go in Cordova. up in the hangar, they had like almost like an op center where you could listen to the radios.
Yes.
Did they
Yes.
still have that? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or
So
they
they
did the
were up
last
there.
time I was there.
Yeah. So they were up
It's been a
there.
couple of years for me too, Steve.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, they went up there, and that's where the FM radios were and everything. And they were kind of listening to us, do our safety calls, and we're on scene and we're looking. And it was, I mean, there was, huge seas, huge seas. I got video because I brought a video camera. It was pretty cool. And there's these NOAA boat just crashing. You see waves coming over it. So it was big seas out there. And we're looking. Then we spotted the boat, and it was upside down. And right off behind it were three survivors in survival suits. And so, we went over and I'm like, God, this is where you really need a swimmer, because they were all tied together, to make themselves a big target.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh man. So I'm in the doorway, and we come into a hover coming up, getting ready to hoist, and I'm looking at them. I'm like, one at a time. I'm like, one. And I think they got it. So I put the basket down, brought it over. One guy got in. I'm like, oh, good. They understood. So I brought him in, ended up getting all three in the helicopter. And then we go hover over the boat, and you can see the survival suit underneath. And it was the fourth guy. And he'd grabbed some buoys, and I guess they got hung up on on something. And when the boat turned over, he had kind of tied them to him so he could jump over and have these buoys. And he was just below the water. I mean, I was like, oh my God. And that's where I was thinking, man, I wish I was a swimmer, because I'd go down and cut him loose, But
yeah,
he had been under for a while, because we had looked for these guys for a long time. The ceiling was like all really low, the visibility was terrible. And so we take them back to the base, Cordova. The guys, and they get out. They had the ambulance there. They went off and whatever. We didn't, we're like, of course they were thank you and all this stuff. We're like, okay. And we went back out, and we didn't see that guy under just under the water until the second time we went out. And okay, we got really close to the boat, and that's when we saw him, because we were searching. They said there were four of them, and we got three. So we went out and started doing an expanding square around the boat. And then before we left, we went right back over the boat, and we were able to see, we hovered for a long time. And I actually have pictures of it, and you can see the the guy just underneath. So we knew where he was, and there was nothing we could do. Dang. So we went back to the base, and we were doing our thing. We were, post-flighting the plane, washing it, doing all that stuff. The next crew took over, the ready crew, because we had gone past our, time. And we're like, okay, we're done. So I said, well, what do you want to do? What are we going to do now? We missed dinner, because the dinner time. But, how the galley was there. You could go in and fix yourself. I'm like, let's go into town, man. Let's get out of here. So we got the truck, went and got the cook, because, I mean, I did that whenever I could in Coast Guard, man. I'd go grab whoever. I'm like, hey, come with us. You're part of the crew too, And he loved it, because he was stuck there,
Yeah.
I said, come on, man. Come on. I'm going to buy you a few beers. Come on. We'll, go have some beers and stuff. So we got the cook and most of the crew, and we headed into town. We got in there. We went to the club, and we couldn't get in. They were having once a year, they were having a summer festival where they bring some bands in, and, and they're playing, and they're like, well, this is going to go on till like 9:00, and then we'll open it up to everybody. And we're like, oh, okay. So we went somewhere else, got a couple of beers, we're eating, and then we're like, let's go back. We're all tired. It was a big day. And, let's go over there and say hi to the band and see what they thought, and, because they were going to be playing.
Yeah.
So we walked back to the club, and it looked crowded. And I mean, when we opened the door, the place was packed. I mean, you've never seen it. You have Cordova.
Oh, yeah.
It was packed, wall to wall, people, just like.
It's like everybody in the town.
Yeah, I'm like, guys, there's guys that came out of the mountains, Cordova, right? They're all, they got the, Chipuli oil. They don't take showers for, weeks at a time. They just put that, whatever it is, oil on them so they smell good. And I'm like, oh my God. We walked in. It was kind of cool. And when we walked in, the band that had come out to visit, they were up there playing because they were going to play the rest of the night. They just stopped. And it's like, oh, what's going on? Is there a fight? We're looking around, we're like, what's going on? And the guy in the band goes, and there they are. That's the crew. That's what, because they had told everybody what had happened before they started. They said, hey, we just want to say something. We were at the Coast Guard base. They say, they were able to go out, and everyone in town had already heard about, because those were 3 local guys that we had brought back, right?
Yeah.
They were from Cordova that we had saved. And we walked in, the band just stopped, and they're like, and there they are. That's the crew from the Coast Guard base. And there's the guys that went out, and, and all of a sudden I'm like, holy, and everyone's staring at us, man. And all of a sudden I felt this arm go around my neck, and I'm like, oh geez,
it's going down.
What'd we do? And this guy's like, the fishermen there, man. I mean, I'm a big guy. They made me look like a midget, man. They made me, I should say, maybe a small person. This guy comes up, puts his arm around me, and I'm like, oh God, what's going on? He's like, get up here. You aren't buying a drink all night. And then we get up to the bar, and they clear the seats for us, so we could all sit down. And they're all yelling, you're going to put their drinks on my tab. No, you're putting their drinks on my tab. And we're like, holy, we had all these shots lined up, and we had beers. And this guy comes, oh, you got to dance with my wife. It's like, holy crap, man. And I got to tell you, man, that was better than any medal or any award you could get with something like that. We were sad. There was one guy that didn't make it, and we did a little toast to him. And but the 3 guys, they knew them all. They knew everybody. But what a night. Oh my God, going home, I remember because these guys are, come on, you got to do a shot with me. And you're like, come on. And so the thing is,
that's awesome.
I brought this cook along with us, and I'm like, he's part of the crew too, this guy, and he was sitting there. I think I made his night, man. It's like he loved being part of that, dude. He was like, make friends, and
oh my gosh.
So that was very, very cool. But we got home. We called one of the other guys who decided not to come with. The pilots didn't want to come either. They're like, no, we're staying. And there was one other guy, Gordy, that he didn't drink or nothing, or so he stayed home. And we called him, and he came and picked us up. So because there was no driving back. There was definitely no driving back.
And the only taxi. Yeah, the only taxi guy in town is in the bar with you guys, so there's no taxi down.
Oh, there was no taxi. Yeah, and that was. Oh, we had plenty of offers for guys to drive us back, and we're like, dude, really? No. But Gordy, he was a cool guy, man. He had no problem. He came out and got us and stuff. But that was, I got to tell you, man. Like I said, that was some of the stuff that it's fun story, So.
That's the stuff that makes it worth it too. I don't get me wrong. I love the award ceremonies. I love reading the awards and news articles, but it's stuff like that there's no, you can't put a price on that for both sides. No. The community's happy that you've gone out and you've helped them out and you've saved a couple of guys, and then you feel like, yeah, I did my job, and then they're like, yeah, and then drinks all around. I love it.
One day I had swimmer duty, and we got launched. There was a boat on fire, guys, while they got their Mayday off, and it was off of Maine. So we flew up to Pease Air Force Base in Maine, and it was 0 degrees. It was 0. And I remember we were going to top off with fuel to head out, and just walking on that snow, you know how it crunches when it's real cold? I'm this is not good. I'm walking, and it's crunching. So as soon as we take off, we're heading out, and it's so clear. It's just, dry as can be, clear, dry. We take off, and it didn't take long for us to see the boat because it was on fire, and so we see the boat, we're heading for it. I go in the back, and I'm like, crap, so I'm stripping down because there's no way I was gonna fly in that dry suit, that neoprene dry suit. So I'm stripping down, throwing my stuff on, and I get all ready, and I'm in the door, and we come up, and there's guys in a life raft, and I don't know, 4 or 5 guys or some guys in a life raft, and their boat was over, away burning and stuff. So I'm like, okay, let's go get them, whatever. So they went to lower me down. I'm in the harness, the old ones that, the old yellow harness that had K-Pop in it.
Yeah, that was
yeah.
way before me.
Yeah,
I've seen the relics.
Yeah, the K-Pop was always waterlogged. And so they're lowering me down. And you ever been in cold weather where you walked down the hall and went to touch your doorknob and you get shocked?
Yes.
Static electricity.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And when it's cold, man, it builds up quick. So it's 0 degrees. These blades are going subsonic through this air. And guess who the ground is? Me being lowered to the water. I'm being lowered down to the water. And I'm like, oh, man, I knew it was coming. And I could see an arc jumping from the water to my fins. And I'm like, oh, this is not going to be good. And I see this arc. And all of a sudden, the flight mech sets me in, man. I was like, holy shit. I thought my fillings were going to jump out of my mouth, man. It hurt so bad. I was like, oh, my God. Well, he lowered me in, but he wanted to get me closer to the raft. So he was going to pick me up and pick me over and drop me again. And when I saw that happen, and I'm like, oh, hell no, man. I said, you're not going to pick me up and, shock me every time. So I said, I'll swim. So, I swam over to the raft, and I made my famous, stupid, how you guys doing? I was like, oh, that was the dumbest question ever that could reach the, down in there, the guys look at each other, we're in a raft, off the coast of Maine, our boat's on fire, could be better, So I went right away into figured out, okay, that was a dumb question. Okay, quick. Okay, is anybody hurt? Who are we going to take first? So I'd take one guy at a time, and they'd lower the basket, and, we loaded them up and got them all to shore. It was all good, but cold, oh my gosh. When at one point, because you know how helicopters are, because there's no wind, when your rotor wash goes out, man, when there's no wind, you have the biggest rotor wash around your helicopter. When you have a headwind, the blades tilt. There's actually times where you're not even in the rotor wash when they lower you down, because there's such a headwind that the rotor wash is behind you,
Right.
But this day it was calm as can be, and the rotor wash fanned out. And so once I put the first guy in the basket, he went up, I turned around and looked, and I'm like, oh my God, the raft had to be a half mile away, dude. It got blown, So I said, you want to pick me up? I'm like, nope. I started swimming, man. Got the next guy. Same thing happened again, And about the 5th guy, I was like, God dang, man, this is kicking my ass, But it was weird, because they went to pick me up and bring me back in the helicopter, and from pulling all those guys. And here's the deal. When I deployed into the water and I came up, I had a hood on, a wetsuit hood. You wear your hood, you get your, everything that came out of the water froze instantly. Froze. It was all, my mask was froze. Everything froze. Everything, you go in the water, come up, boom, it froze. It was unreal. And so when I got back in the helicopter, in the doorway, when they hoisted me and I turned around and I sat down, it was about this thick of ice. And I'm like, oh shit. So I was just going to pull my gunner's belt like I normally do. And I'm like, holy crap. And I start crawling to the back, and then I undo it. But yeah, we saved those guys. But I just wanted to stress how cold it was, man. It was crazy.
Oh, yeah. New England is cold. And it's a weird cold. Yeah. It's not like a normal cold. It's like a bone-chilling cold. It's just a little different than it's. Yeah. Love it.
So I go from Sitka to Cape Cod, and I show up in Hawaii, and we start implementing and doing all that stuff, which is another story. But I'm like, we went out to our first deployment, and I never had worn my shorty. I had one, they issued it to me. But no, actually, you know what we wore? Our UDTs, the brown shorts.
Yeah, the super short shorts.
And the little zip up top. What they gave us in Navy Rescue Swimmer School.
Oh, okay.
They, when you left there, they gave you a little zipper tie. And that's what we used to deploy in. And I was like jumping in the water. It was warm. And I'm like, oh, the water was clear. And it was like, oh my God, this is awesome, man. We did one time with Lobs too. We were doing some training where we go out in the life raft. Cause I was part of the training team, and I used to tell the guys, even the C-130s, when I go to these meetings, I'm like, we qualify guys. They learn how to drop. We teach guys how to hoist. We do all that stuff, but we don't teach them how to search. I said, we go out on searches, things to look for, that little dot that doesn't go away. Right. I said, there's an art form to it and stuff. So I used to press that, we take a boat from the small boat station. We go out, we bring a life raft, and we put a bunch of guys in it. And then the boat would go away, and then the helicopter and the C-130 would come out and have to find us, They knew the general direction, the general area, and they do a search. And the helicopter, they'd be searching. And we're like, man, they should be seeing us by now. And it was really cool because after we did that for a while, the pilots came back and go, that was some of the best training we've ever had. He says, can't believe how hard. We knew, and it was a calm. We had big swells and stuff, but we said, I can't believe how hard it was to find a life raft. And then once we did the life raft, they found us and stuff. We would take a swimmer and swim them way away, and they're like, okay, we got a person in the water somewhere around the raft. So the helicopter would come in. They're like, holy crap, man, we can't find them. And then we tell the swimmer on the radio, I said, okay, light your smoke. Boom, you light his smoke. And they're like, oh, there he is right there. And the pilots were like, man, this is great training. Yeah. So one time we're in the raft, and I was the guy. I was going to swim way away, and Lobstein came with me, We swam way far away, and we're sitting there, and we're waiting for the helicopter to come find us. And I look down on my mask, it's super clear there. And I see this huge black, and there's some bull sharks there that had, they're pretty aggressive. Huge black mass. And I'm like, crap. I think, Brian. He goes, what? I said, look. He goes, what? And it's coming up towards us. And he goes, holy shit. I said, go. And he starts swimming, fast as he can. And I'm looking, and I'm like, oh, it's coming. So I turn and I start swimming, and I'm going to tell you my side of the story, because if you hear it from any of the other guys in the raft, like Wilson or Estrada or any of those guys, they got a different version. I didn't see it this way, but they said I swam over Lobs and pushed him behind, and he wasn't. I said, yeah, that might have happened. I was in a little bit of panic. I said, he wasn't going to get in my way, man. I swam right over him, and I went over and got it. But it ended up being a pilot whale coming up to check us out, And it was like, geez. Oh, crap, man. Yeah. But you didn't know, man. At the time, it was, it was Jaws coming up to eat us, man. That's what I was thinking. And we do that training, and guys we did a lot of stuff. We were in the life raft, and the C-130 would come over and do a message drop. You ever been in a raft when a C-130 does a message? So in the back of the C-130, they have these little forestry message blocks. They can write a note in it. Say a boat doesn't have a radio or something, and they can write a note on it. Hey, do this, do that, and it has a long streamer. And when they fly over, they throw it out and they try to hit the boat. So they could get the note to whoever So they would practice this. And so we're in the raft, and they're like, okay, we're going to do a message drop to you guys. And we're like, oh, that'd be cool. So we're all sitting in the raft, and here comes the C-130. Dude, they're at 50 feet. 50 feet off the water.
Wow.
Yeah, 50 feet coming right at us. And we're sitting there, and we're like, this C-130's coming at us 50 feet. And I'm like, dude, I just kind of backed off. I fell off the raft and I went underwater. I said, "Oh fuck, man, this is crazy. This is too."
That's crazy.
I
That's
was like, "This
crazy.
is
Awesome.
crazy, man." But man, they threw the message and hit us and then flew off. But it was kind of one of the coolest things, man. I was like, "Holy crap, man!" But no, that was good training, and then we'd bring the helicopter in, and we said, "Okay, we want you to try to hoist to the raft," and that was such a unique, bring a helicopter in to hoist to a raft. It's hard, man. That rotor wash
Yeah.
is pushing that thing,
Yep.
and if it's got the top up, it's pushing the top over, and
Yep.
the people are kind of stuck inside. There's a lot of unique things that, you don't want to be your first time experiencing that on a case. You want to do it, in training,
Agreed.
so yeah, just come up with all this stuff to do, for them and stuff. And we ended up doing that a lot. We go offshore and do it. And poor Pat, man, he's in the life raft, and I look over at him. I'm like, "You okay?" He's like, talk about getting seasick, dude. People that don't normally get seasick, man. If you're in a
Yeah.
raft for a while,
Oh,
man.
dude. Yeah.
But
I'm with you on that one.
yeah, we had one time the pilots in Barbers Point. They lived in officer housing, and there were some guys from Tripler. I mean, not Tripler. Yeah, was it Tripler there? Yeah, the big hospital. And
Okay.
there was a heart surgeon guy that knew one of the pilots, and pilot says, "Hey, next time we have a medevac, we'll bring you along or something. You could be really helpful." So there was a medevac. A guy was having a heart attack, and so the pilot calls his surgeon friend to bring him. He said, "Hey, you'll be great. We'll bring you along." But he lived off base. He called him and said, "Yeah, I'll be there right away." Well, you know, the swimmer, I just happened to be there. I wasn't a duty swimmer. The swimmer goes out, brings all this stuff, and we're not going to need you. We're bringing a heart surgeon, and he's like, okay. So he comes back. It was like a third. He comes in, and I'm like, I was the first class. This is before the chief. I was the first class, but I was in charge of the shop. Me and
Yeah.
Kazmarek did nights. I did days, and I'm like, what? This golden hour, man. What the hell? So I went up, and they're like, no, we're waiting for this. He's going to be the guy. He's the most capable. And we're like, all right, whatever. So we're all sitting in the shop in that area, and he shows up, and the pilot brings him down. He needs a flight suit, and we're like, okay. So we get him a pack suit. We're like, okay, we give him a flight suit. And the surgeon's in there putting his flight suit on. He goes, okay, I'm going to need, IVs. I'm going to need this. I'm going to need that, and everything. And it was so funny. Brian Lobbs sat there. He grabbed a pocket mask, right?
Yeah.
He threw it to the flight surgeon and go, that's all we got. he threw him a pocket mask. And the guy goes, what? And he goes, oh, yeah, and here's our oxygen, here. That's all you got, man. And you're going to go down and put this guy, you guys, you know how to put him in a litter, right? They're like, he goes, what's a litter? We're like,
Oh my
what
gosh.
the hell? So there was a learning curve. We had, same thing, new pilots with swimmers. We had to bring them in, teach them. It was like,
You gotta school
what the
everybody up.
hell, man?
You gotta learn
I know,
somewhere.
man. And I'm like, God dang, man, really? I got to do this again?
Wow.
And then of course, like we were teabags again. We were just being, we had to get everybody qualified and everything. So it was pretty cool. We had Hurricane Aniki, and when we were there, but a lot of people didn't hear about Hurricane Aniki. It was in September 11th, or not, back in 1991 or something like that. But at the same time, Andrew had hit Miami, and that was all over the news. But Aniki had hit Kauai and wiped it out. I mean, so we knew this hurricane was coming, but we thought it was coming for Oahu, which would have been really bad, really bad. So what do? We load all the helicopters up in C-130s, and we fly out to the Big Island, and because we need to get out of the way of this hurricane so we could be ready to go after it hits. And I had their duty that night and so we get to Hawaii, the Big Island. It's beautiful there. I mean, it was kind of windy in Oahu, but it was coming right for Kauai. And so that night I get launched out. We get launched out. They heard a mayday over the radio. So we take off and we start flying. it's not nice, man. We're out there just getting jacked around, jacked around. But they weren't able to tell us. We're just out trying to pick up a signal in Mayday. We're just out flying. We're going wherever we can. We got nothing, and then we came back. So it's like, 3, 4 in the morning, and I lay down in bed, and then about 6 o'clock, I get a knock at the door, and I open up, and I'm tired, man. I'm like, what? What do you need? He said, we need load masters. Remember I told you there was only like 3 of us in Hawaii, and so we need load masters right now. We have all these C-130s. Kauai got wiped out. Kauai is like no longer, man. And he said, we need to get stuff there. And I'm like, all right. So I throw my flight suit on, and I go down, and they said, you're on that C-130, and I go over, and we start loading generators, the National Guard, water, all kinds of supplies, everything I could get on there. We did. I got as many National Guard as I could, as seats as we had and stuff. I had to figure all that out. Did the load. We take off. They had to go. There was somebody on Kauai had to push all the airplanes off the runway because they were scattered everywhere. And so we land, and we taxi in, and it was a surreal thing, man. We land. We lowered a ramp, and I lowered a ramp, put the things down to unload everything, and people are just wandering around in like daze. It's like, like, holy shit, what did we go through? It's like, we're like, oh my God, this place wrecked, man. They had all the hotels on the beaches got wiped out. They clocked, because Kauai in the middle, it's like the Grand Canyon. They clocked winds at like 300 miles an hour going through some of those canyons. It was unreal.
Cow.
And so, but the winds were like they were being funneled, so they increased velocity. But it was bad. So we unloaded everything. We're like, holy crap! And everyone, people come up to the plane. You got water, and we're like, yeah, we got water. And so we're trying to get them all the water we can. We had in the C-130, we had water storage things that we never. I'm filling up people's everything I can. We're giving it to them, and then when we had to get out of there because the next C-130 was coming in, so we taxi out and we take off. And as we're taking off, I'm looking out the window, and I see a sailboat, and it's sitting there upright, the mast is up. There was a sailboat up, and I got on the ICS, and I'm pilot loadmaster, and they're like, yeah, what's up, Hathaway? I said, sir, I see a sailboat down there. And they're like, yeah, so sailboat. I said, there was a hurricane last night. And they're like, oh, yeah. Well, so then we, out of our climb, and then we circled back down. And as we got closer to that sailboat, and as we flew over them, you could see it was the mat, all the stays were broken and everything like that. And, we dropped a radio to them, and they called us and like, yeah, my husband's all messed up. We pitch pulled like 3 or 4 times. In other words, the sailboat didn't roll this way; it went end over end. And they were in it. I guess they're the ones that sent the Mayday that night, but their antenna was hanging off in the water, and it was a real mess. So we called back to the air station, and guess who had duty?
Labo.
So they got in the helicopter, came over, hoisted these guys off, got all these awards, I'm like, so I spent the whole day, man. We went back to the Big Island, and we're loading National Guard, everything we can, water, food supply, flying back to Kauai. We made about, I don't know, we flew until the pilots were in the bag. And then, and I didn't even want to tell them about me flying all night because I didn't want to, have them to go, oh, no, we got to get someone else. There was no one else. And I'm like, I'm just going to suck it up and, and so, we taxied back in, and, everyone's, by the time we did the other flights, the helo was back, and everyone's patting lobs on the back, giving them, and I'm sitting there walking into the shop going, oh my God, man. And so, that's C-130 guys, a thankless job, man. It's like, but that was pretty bad, man. Iniki that was a bad hurricane, man. Wiped everything out. So, and then we had another case where we had it was Super Bowl. I remember the Super Bowl because I had worked out in the gym. I went back to the shop, took a shower, and got all dressed. There was a big Super Bowl party going on at the club. And there was a club on Barbers Point there's a club right there in Lissica, but it was a really cool place. Beer, big screen TVs, outdoor volleyball. It was a really cool place. And I'm all excited, man. I'm going to overshower, and everyone's already over there having beers and stuff. And I'm walking across the ramp, and this chief yells out from maintenance control, Hathaway. I'm like, yeah, chief. He said, you been over there yet? You had any beers? I said, no, man, I'm going to get one right now. He said, nope. He said, we need you. We need a swimmer. We're going to deploy on the back of the, I think it was a Hamilton or something like that.
Okay.
Jarvis, I think. It was a 378 out of Hawaii. And
Okay.
he says, we need you on the back. We're going to deploy. There was a big freighter, a big ship that had been hijacked by Chinese mafia. And they hijacked the ship, took it in, loaded it with a bunch of Chinese, had paid them to be smuggled in to the United States.
Okay.
And they put them all down in the hold. They had the people who paid more money were up on top, and the guys had guns, and they were holding these guys at gunpoint. And they started coming towards Hawaii, but the crew was able to get on the radio and get a mayday out, and told the Coast Guard what was happening. But it was out of range for the helicopter or anything. So I had to run. We ran down there. We got the helicopter on the boat, and they had the turbines going, man, all the way. I think the jet turbines they have on the ships. I don't know if people know that, but they're like jet engines. And we were hauling ass, way out. I don't even know what it was near, but we're going way out there, man. It took us 2 days to get there.
Wow.
And then we're heading towards this boat. The boarding team is practicing, because we were going to hoist them down. We didn't have fast rope at the time, but we were going to hoist them down, and they were going to have to, go find the guys that hijacked the boat at gunpoint, whatever, and get them. And they were practicing, doing all their boarding stuff. And so we get on scene, and man, you could smell this boat before you saw it. It was bad. It had been floating for like 2 weeks. And all the people down below, the guys wouldn't let them come above, and there was no water, no bathrooms, no nothing. They were all in that hull. It was nasty, man. And there was probably 300 or 400 Chinese on this thing. And so our helicopter comes in, the boarding team, they're hovering over the boat. They could be shot at any time, and they're hovering over the boat, and the boarding team is, they're jumping in. They secure an area. Right off the bow, they secure a spot with their guns and everything. And then they threw ladders over, and they brought the small boats over. And then the rest of the boarding team came up that way. And they were able to go and clear all the rooms. And they caught the hijackers didn't shoot them. Thank good. There was no gunfight, but the hijackers, they were able to apprehend them, and they ended up chaining them to the railing, and then they were assessing the situation. The engine had failed, or it wasn't working or anything, and the boat was just adrift out there for like weeks, and they're out of water, food. It was a bad situation.
Wow.
So for the next week, the C-130 from Barbers Point came out and was dropping supplies that we could, we'd go pick it all up in the boat, small boats and stuff, bring it on, put it in cargo nets, and then we would they dropped me on the cargo boat, on the ship, and we would direct the sling loads over, and I would unhook them and unload them, and then they go over and grab more, and we do that all day, and that was pretty crazy, man. And we had we finally were able to get them water and food, some medical attention, and that was a pretty cool that's a pretty cool case. So
when you're talking about, like, are you talking cargo hook sling loading?
Yeah.
So you
cargo
were
hook.
on. So you would. All right.
Well,
so
they
I
took
want to
me
make sure
over.
I got this. They would drop stuff. That's all good. So they would drop stuff out of the C-130 to you guys around on scene. You'd pick it up. The ship would get it out of the water or on the ship. then you would sling load it from the Jarvis or the Coast Guard ship to the other vessel. Wow.
Right. Yeah. They were dropping stuff in these sonobuoy containers, like blankets and food and water and spam. And actually, what they
spam, of course, there's spam.
We put a big
coming from Hawaii.
They put a big thing on there. No more spam. They're like, these people haven't eaten in 2 weeks. Spam is not what they need right now, and mostly rice. They were, they needed, they wanted rice because it was easier on eating and stuff. So, no, man, and then we spent all day picking that stuff up, bringing it to the boat, going up into the hangar, unloading it, then packing it into these cargo nets. And then the helicopter took me over, hoisted me down, and started sling loading it over. And they wanted me on the helicopter because I knew I was, knew what I was doing. And we deliver all this stuff to them and everything. And they finally got the boat, the MKs and stuff, were able to get the boat running again. But there was a problem. They didn't know where to take these guys. They're like, it's too far from Hawaii. So they had to wait for clearance to take them. And I forget what island they ended up taking them to, but it was crazy, man. It was, that was
that is
deal.
wild. That I was not expecting that one. That's crazy.
No, man, I mean, we did all kinds of stuff, man. It was like, did a
go Coast Guard.
Before we had direct deployment, I did a cliff rescue of the CO of Sand Island, which is a small boat station in Hawaii, downtown.
Yeah.
And he went hiking, and he was up on a ridge, and he climbed down. It started raining, and he couldn't get up because the mud and the grass was too slick. So he was on this little plateau, and he had his phone, and he called the CO of the air station and said, "Hey, man, I'm stuck. Can you come get me?" And he's like, "Where are you at?" And he told him the vicinity, and we took a phone with us. And this is back when they had flip phones, dude. The phones weren't that good. And we fly out, and I'm on the phone. He's like, "Oh, I can see you guys now. I can see you guys now." I was like, "Well, okay, give us a location, And so we were able to finally find him, and they lowered me down with the old sling, They lowered me down. I put him in a sling, tightened it up, had my sling on, and we did a double pickup and came back up.
Wow.
He was asking the CO, he says, "Can you mark this down as a training flight? I don't want to be in it." And the CO was like, "No, this is a rescue, dude. No." It was funny. So
that's great.
But yeah, that's pretty much Hawaii, man. And like I said, we had a great crew, loved it there. Best station I ever been at, ever. So I had back-to-back tours lined up, but then I made chief, so I had to transfer. So
yep.
So and that's when I went to Savannah. So I was,
Savannah,
I got my
Georgia.
pick, and then Savannah. So I went to Savannah, and then I don't know, dude. Things would just happen there. We were coming back from water skiing the Ogeechee River, and Dave Lawson and I were kind of racing to go to eat at McDonald's or something like that. I don't know where I forget where we said we were going, but anyways, we were kind of and he beat me through a light, and I'm sitting there, God dang it, man! I said, man, I got to stop it. So I stop at the light, and I look in my mirror, and I see this guy coming, and I'm like, "Oh, dude!" And he just ran the light, T-boned this car right in front of me. And I had just got done preaching. And one of the things I made all the swimmers do, I ordered them all EMT kits. And I said, when you're off duty, take it in your car, take it with you. You're an EMT 24/7. I said, just, it'll be worth it and all, just carry it with you, And so a lot of them did. And Chad Carlson ended up responding to a rollover, and a lady and her kids, and he went in and was able to pull the kids out and pull the lady out. And he had his EMT kit, and he was treating them when the fire department showed up and stuff. And he got a really nice award for that stuff. And so I was like, oh, good. My point, that's my point, we're EMTs 24/7. So then he T-boned. So I jumped out of my car, grabbed my EMT kit, and I went over, checked the one guy. The other guy was really messed up, the guy who got T-boned. So I'm over there, I'm putting him in the neck brace, and I'm, doing my primary survey, doing all this stuff, getting them. And when that happened, on the corner where the intersection, there was a gas station, and there was a news camera van, the local news was in their van, and they were getting gas. And the guy jumped out with his camera, and he comes up. So he's there before the fire department, anybody, but he sees me. I got my EMT bag, and I'm going in there. I'm doing all this stuff, and he's sitting there videoing it all. And then the fire department shows up, and I give him the vitals. I said, this guy, he's got a hip. He's breathing okay. Blood pressure, this, that, that. And then I just kind of walked away. They took over, and they're like, hey, thanks a lot, and everything. I get my car, and I go, and Dave goes, where you been, man? I'm done eating. Kenny Rogers, that's where we ate. He says, man, I'm done eating. I said, man, you made a mistake, dude. I said, there was an accident right behind you. The guy behind you ran a light, hit somebody, and I went out there and did it. So that night, the CO, everyone's, they're home watching the news, and there I am out there with the CMT kit doing all this stuff. So they got to see it firsthand, and I'm like, oh shit. So I got a, accommodation medal or something like that for it. I'm like, oh man, that was, really nothing. So he saw that, the CEO saw that and said, oh, good job and everything, came out and congratulated me. He said, thanks and stuff. Then, not long, Pat Barry lived in this apartment complex that was real low, and we had a lot of rain. And so the apartment complex flooded out. I mean, there was 6 feet, 8 feet of water underneath their apartments. Everyone was stuck in their apartments, and it was bad, And so I called Pat. I said, Pat, you going to make it into duty? He's like, no, man. But he says, hey, Chief, man, I'm stuck in my house with all my kids and and stuff. And I said, well, we'll come get you, man. We'll come get you. So someone knew where he lived. I think Dave Lawson knew where he lived. So we take this 8-bed truck, we fill up a 7-man raft, and we drive down there. And it's nasty water, so we throw our dry suits on, that say USCG on the back. Yeah. And so we're waiting. We're putting this raft over, and we get Pat and his whole family and all their stuff, and we're bringing them back so he could get, because he had moved his truck out. We're bringing them back so he could get his truck. As we're doing this, people are like, hey, can you help us? Can you help us? And we're like, oh, yeah, we can help you. So we pat up. And so all day we're loading people up. Well, here comes that news truck again. And he's down there videoing us. And here we are with these Coast Guard, it says Coast Guard on the back of our suits and stuff. And we're loading, we're shuttling all these people. So it makes the news that night. And the CEO's watching it, and he's like, what the hell? When did this happen? What's going on? We're on this, because they were praising the Coast Guard for doing these rescues. And so he calls the ops boss. He says, how come you didn't call me and tell me about this, the swimmers rescuing all these people? And he goes, what are you talking about? He goes, turn the news on. So, of course, the ops boss calls the engineering officer, right? And so he calls me. He goes, Hathaway. And I explained to him, I said, man, we went to get Pat for duty, and all these people needed help. And so we helped them, and here we were on the news, life rafts and Coast Guard on the back. And they're just like, good job. We kept getting in the news, man. It was like unbelievable, man. It was like, God. That's what I was saying. The CO loved us, dude. We could do no wrong there, But like I said, he was a really good CO. He's the guy. I got to tell you about this. So in Savannah, when you came into duty, one guy would go to Charleston, the other guy would stay in Savannah. And the guy going to Charleston would pass the other guy leaving Charleston, coming back. So we always, 24/7, we had a ready crew in Charleston, South Carolina. So we have a air station there, believe it or not. So we would, just switch. And one time I was in Charleston, and we got a call. It was like, I don't know, 2, 3 in the morning. And some older gentleman was missing. And his wife called overdue, in his boat, his truck and trailer. And he was like 80 years old. And he was a diabetic. And she was really worried because he didn't have his medicine for diabetes. And I'm like, he's 80 years old, dude. I'd be worried. And so the boats they heard about it early, and they were out looking. So they couldn't find them. So they're like, well, we'll call the helicopter and see if they can give us a hand. I'm like, man, dude, why didn't you call us earlier? But
Yeah.
anyways, they called us. So we take off in Charleston, and he was somewhere in the marsh area, and people used to get lost in the marsh areas all the time. It was a common thing because the boat are low, and you get back in the canal, and it would dead end, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm lost. So I made a wrong turn somewhere. The road could be right there, but you can't find your way. So he had some engine problem, and you could tell that he had pulled into this area thinking he could make it to a house that wasn't that far away. So he got out of it. It was low tide, and he got out of his boat. But what happens in that marsh area, you get what they call fluff mud, and it's basically quicksand. It's like quicksand. You get in that fluff mud, and he was trying to walk it, and he's 80 years old. He probably was, and he was sinking. So now he's stuck in this mud, and that's where he is, and his boat's back into the marsh. So we're flying, and we finally, we started to go through the marsh area looking for him because we're like, he's not in the boats. Had plenty of time to look in the, intercoastal. So we're in the, and then finally we see his boat, and we're like, so we come back around and we see his boat, and we're like, oh, there's his boat, but he's not in it. What's going on? And we couldn't see him because he had mud all, he was blending in. He was camouflaged. He's like, all muddy and stuff, but happened to see one arm going like this, but this arm was stuck, and his legs were stuck, but this arm he had out, and he was going like this, and we saw the movement, and we're like, holy crap, there he is right there. So we come back around, and they lower me down, and I basically, when I hit that fluff mud, I laid down flat because I couldn't walk. I had my fins, I didn't have them on, but I laid down flat, and I basically army crawled through the mud, keeping myself wide, over to him. And I had to pull him out. He was stuck good. He was really stuck. So I got to him, say, hey, how you doing there all? And then he goes, well, I didn't say, how you doing? I learned my lesson. I said, okay, man, we're going to get you out of here. I said, but, these old guys, they're tough as crap, man. I thought I found out on SART cases. You get an old guy, man, they're usually tough as hell, man. I'm like, hey, I'm going to get you out of here. Like, all right, man, whatever. So I grabbed him under the arms. I turned around on my back. I grabbed him under the arms. And I'm trying to pull him out. But he is stuck. So I'm like, oh, crap, man. I can't get him out. So I take my leg and I work it down his leg. I kind of ran my foot right down his leg. And I started working my leg back and forth. And then I got my foot underneath his foot, and I created like an air. And I was able to pull him out.
Yeah.
And when I pulled him out, he's laying on top of me because I'm laying on my back, and I got this guy on top of me, and I'm like, okay, now what am I going to do? And man, our flight crews are freaking awesome. And next thing I know, the basket's like, boom, right next to me. I'm laying down, and there's the basket. It sits in the mud right next to me. And I'm like, oh, good. So I basically bench pressed this guy. I lifted him up, bench pressed him, and just boom, got him in the basket, And when I twisted like that, my back was like, oh, what'd I do to my back? I'm like, oh, shit. And I threw him in, and they hoisted him up, got him in there, and then came back to get me, and they lowered the hook down, and we were wearing the old harnesses, that went underneath you. And I hooked up, and they're pulling on me, man, and I'm stuck. So I'm working my legs back and forth. But when they pulled, because of the resistance, my back went, and I'm like, oh yeah, man, that was perfect. So now my back's
lucky guy.
Black line. So we get in, and we took him to the hospital, and he survived. Everything was good. He was, he made it and stuff like that. But we get back, and I heard you say one of the things about having a dirty. You talk about a mess, man. The mud in the back of that kilo, that fluff mud, there's little crabs running around, and it smelled like sewer, man. And it was like, oh my God. So awful. We spent the rest of the night cleaning the helicopter, but that was Mudman, man. So we got him. And then there was another case off Charleston where there was a boat, and it was sinking, and one of our helicopters had gone out. out of Charleston had gone out and delivered a pump to them. And because they were taking water on, they were anchored, but they were offshore quite a ways. And it was pretty rough. And they left their pump and they were out of gas. By the time they found them, they were able to get the pump to them, and then they left. And so the guys couldn't get the pump started because, most of the time
no
they
one
couldn't.
can
That's
ever
why usually
get the pump started.
I've watched guys open them and then dump it all out, and I'm like, oh, it's got a plastic freaking carburetor. You should probably, oh man, And so they couldn't get started, and the helicopter left them, and so they launched us out of Savannah because Charleston was basically in the bag at this time. So we show up. It's at night. It's I don't know. It's in the morning or whatever, and the waves have picked up, and now the boat's taken on enough water. They were anchored, but the waves were coming over the bow and washing everything off the back of the boat. It's getting ready to go down. And so I had there's 4 guys on there, and so they put me in the water. I swam over, and I said, "Hey, one guy, I swam over to the stern, and man, there's bait buckets. There was bait all around me. There was those buckets of coiled up long lines with hooks, and I'm like, oh God, man. And so I said, one guy. And so one guy jumped in, and I grabbed him, I lowered the basket, and I picked him up, and we hoisted him, and I swim back over, and there's 3 guys. They can't swim. And, and I'm like, why don't you have freaking life jackets on? I'm like, golly, so 3 guys on the stern, and they're freaking out because the last helicopter left. They dropped the pump and they were afraid, I guess, we were going to leave too. We picked one guy up, and they're like, so I swam back over to these 3 guys, and they happened to be smaller guys. Thank God they weren't these huge fishermen, but they were, they were a little bit smaller. And I said, okay, another guy right there, you come on. All 3 of them jump. And I'm like, they jump.
Oh, no
and
way.
Next thing you know, it's like a cat in the water, man. I got these guys just clawing at me, And that's where, to all the young swimmers, where you go and do your practicing escapes and releases, and you get tired, after, I did, and, after so many years, it's like, okay, yeah, here we go, escape and release, all this. But you had to do it every month, right?
Right.
That's where, by doing it so much, you don't even think about it. It's muscle memory. And dude, I had a guy grab me. Man, I did escape, turned him, put him in a cross chest carry, was able to grab the other guy and grab him and hold him with this first guy. And then I had the other guy with my other hand. And I'm kicking, trying to keep them all up. And they saw this happen in the helicopter. So I couldn't give them ready for pickup. They knew it was ready for pickup. And so they brought the raft in. I took the one guy. They brought the basket in. So I took the one guy, and I was able to get him in the basket, stuffed him in there. And now I had these 2 other guys. I had one in cross chest, but also had this other guy. And so I had him, and then we got that guy up. And then the next guy, I was able to get him in the basket. And then the other one, my mask got torn off when they grabbed me and stuff.
Oh, man.
But I'm telling you, man, like I said, any thing to all these new, swimmers, man, you think these drills, dude, it just kicked it. It was like, I didn't even have to think. I don't remember even thinking, okay, I need to do a front head hold with, whatever.
Yeah.
Dude, it just, boom, it happened. And I had the guy, in a cross chest carrier, like right away. So we were able to get
my money
them,
was on you the whole time.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So we got these guys, and they had mentioned afterwards, after we got them back and stuff, they said, we were scared you guys were going to leave us, because you left us before, with that pump that didn't work. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But
pump that didn't work.
Operator
error.
yeah. And then, I did a plane crash in Savannah also, where we showed up, and it was one of the Army airplanes had crashed on Ossabaw Island. And actually, the pilot that was on it
he was the father of his daughter swam with my daughter. You know, it was crazy.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I went down, and there was just this smoke coming up, a little bit of smoke coming up. I mean, they had pile drived in. It was, and you know, the helicopter landed. I ran over, and what was the only thing left smoking was, I don't want to talk about that, but it was the bodies, you know.
Yeah,
so,
I get it.
And I'm like, oh man, I knew it was a plane crash, and I'm like, you know, that's really supposed to mess with stuff. But I said I didn't care, so I called the helicopter and I said, hey man, can you guys lower down? Can you land? I'm going to come get the fire extinguisher, you know, out of the helicopter. And I told them why, and they landed right away. And I got the fire extinguisher and I went over, and you know, I just, you know, I put them out. I'm like, I can't, you know, there was no one else there. I mean, the Army hadn't showed up yet. We just, you know, found them, and you know, it was bad, man. It was a bad scene. So
that's tough.
But
that's really
you know,
tough.
stuff like that, it just sticks with you, man. You got to do stuff like that. It's, you know, when you tell these guys, you know, they're all gung ho about being swimmers, and I'm like, man, you know, there's a lot more to it, you know. And also when you come in, like in Savannah, man, every duty night, you had a night flight, every duty night. So you would come in, you wait, because the night check didn't come in till like 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, you know, especially during the summer. So you'd come in, the Charleston plane would come back, and you'd have to wash it and post-flight it and fuel it. And then any other planes that were going on night flights, you had to get them ready. And then, you know, grab something to eat real quick. And then they had a night flight. And then you usually had to go on the night flight where they come out and deploy you and drop you in the water at night and take off. And then, you know, they bring in another helicopter and do another evolution. And then you'd come back and you wash your gear out, hang it up, and you're on duty. I mean, and then, you know, and that's why you always had 2 sets of like everything. And, you know, you guys said, I mean, those night flights, they wore on you, man. It would be like, you know, you hear a lot of stuff about swimmers, and you hear about the cases and all the glory and this and that and other thing, but there's a lot more that goes into that, man. And, you know, those nasty cases that a lot of people don't talk about. And then the training, you know, you got to keep going. And one of the things that I was ready to be done with when I was a swimmer, I wasn't ready. It kind of forced my hand into going warrant officer was, and I know this is going to sound silly, but I had been stung so many times by jellyfish at the big Portuguese man of war.
Yeah.
At one of the flights I went on in Savannah, you don't see them, and there's a lot of them in Savannah, a lot of them. And at night, you can't see them. You can't swim away from them. And all of a sudden, dude, I got stung across my face and went down here, was actually bleeding. And it went down, and then it went across my leg and down it was a long one. And I mean, I got stung bad. And that wasn't the first time. I mean, I've been stung a lot of times, you know, from my whole, you know, Hawaii used to get stung, you know, all the different places. And, we were doing training, and then, you know, I got up back in the helicopter and I started wheezing. I was breathing, and my airway was kind of constricting, you know. I was starting to wheeze, you know, and I'm like, holy crap, what the hell? And plus, you know, I'd been stung and everything. So we went back in, and I went, you know, of course I went over to medical, and the guy says, man, you need to start carrying the EpiPen. You're building, like, you know, I used to get stung, it hurt, all right, you know, no big deal, wash it off, you know, live with it. But I had been stung so many times, I was starting to build it was getting worse and worse every time, you know what I mean?
Wow,
so and I'm like, yeah, okay, you know. They said, well, you know, try not to get stung anymore. And I'm like, that ain't happening, you know.
Noted.
That ain't happening.
I was locked out of the way.
So, you know, there's a lot of things people don't, you know, and like I said, you know, a lot of people said, oh, you get to work out all the time. No, you have to work out. You know, you're having a bad day. You know, you didn't sleep good at night. You have newborns at home, and, you know, you didn't sleep, but, you know, you got to go run. You got to go run. You got to do your push-ups, sit-ups, and, you know what I mean? You got to stay in shape, and you have to do it, you know? So there's no, I get to do it. You have to do it, in order to stay qualified. So,
Yep.
there's, the swimmer program, that's why you got kind of a strong brotherhood. All these guys have lived through all these things together,
Right.
and everybody's had cases that were huge impacts on them, and then you can share with each other, and a lot of people don't understand, and you could talk to them, and and they know, the training you went through and everything like that. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a flip side to that too, man. We had some pretty good times together too. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It's a group of guys that, they work hard and play hard,
Still do.
Yeah.
In
oh
and
yeah.
out
Still
of the
do.
guard.
Yeah. So, but then we had a lot of cases in Savannah, man. A lot of people, we get lost in those marshes, like I said, families, and we go down, and I jumped in the water one time and I swam over to a boat with a family in it. And I jumped on board, and I'm like, hey, and they had been lost in the marsh, and we were up high. We found them. They got called overdue. We showed up, and I jumped in the boat, and the guy goes, man, you guys, you sure are brave, and I'm like, yeah, rescue swimmers, this, that. And he said, no, man, there's no, I didn't say that. But, and then he said, there's been about a 12, 15-foot alligator hanging around a boat all night. And I'm like, I was like, holy shit, really?
Damn it.
Man, I'm like, holy crap, man. I saw a lot of alligators in Savannah, man, especially going up to Charleston all the time. So, but now, there's a lot more stuff, like I said, we'd have good times together. And, but anyway, that's about it for now, man. You get me going, man. I'll keep going all day, but I've probably definitely, someone can listen to this on the way to taking a trip somewhere and get there and come back and still be going. So,
Steve, I have absolutely loved all of these stories. I'm glad we got an opportunity to do this again. So Thank you. I appreciate it.
No, sure. Well, thanks for letting me, I love sharing, man. And, like I said, I like talking I would love to talk, show up and talk to the new guys, and pass your knowledge. I mean, this is the best way to do it. It's one of the ways.
Yeah. Well, just to shop talk and telling stories and the lessons you've learned. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me here say, you know what? Wow, I've learned a lot as far as there's another way to do it. So, or there's something that you haven't thought about because you haven't experienced it yet. So, yeah.
And
awesome.
That's what I'm saying. Come up with those ideas, man, and shoot them. I could never get them to do it, but I said, man, when you're in the water and you got someone that you need to put in the litter, and you got them in the cross chest carry, and you're holding their head above the rotor wash, you know what I'm talking about, and they're bringing the litter down, and you're trying to disconnect that litter and have the guy in a cross chest. I always said, why don't you just come in low and slow and drop the litter? Drop it in the water. Yeah, just drop it in. It'll pop up. I can go over, grab the guy by the collar, hold him up towards the top of it, and then undo and get him strapped in. I've done it before, So it's like, come up with those ideas. Come up with it. So, and how they always ask. I've had people write me and stuff and say, "Hey, what? My son's going to be a swimmer. What would you tell him?" Everything like that. I said, "Well." I said, here's something to do. I said, something I'd tell him. I said, buy him a journal and tell him, buy it small enough so it'll fit in his flight bag. And I said, if you think of it on your duty night, pull it out and write, if you have a case, write the pilot's name, where you went, what you did. So, it's at the end of your career or, however long you're a swimmer, you can look back, you have all this info to go back on. You know what I mean? I wish I would have
totally.
That, You know what I mean? There's stuff that pops into my head. And I'm like, oh shit, I remember. Yeah, we did that.
God,
I'm like,
I forgot about that one.
Yeah. So, I said, keep a journal, it's kind of cool, and you go to, write home and you got something, tell them about and stuff. You have all the facts right anyways. So,
Yeah.
So
I love it. Steve, man, thank you again for coming on. We've been on here for a little while, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved every
I'm
bit
sorry,
of it.
man.
So,
I told you were in trouble, man, because I took notes, and I'm like, dude, you're in trouble, man. I got notes. You don't want to,
This is perfect. I appreciate it. So,
yeah.
Well, Steve, the next time I come down to Florida, I'm buying you a beer, just so you know.
Man, you better look me up. I swear to God, man. We'll go out in the boat. I got a boat. We'll go out in the boat. We'll sit on the sandbar and drink beers. It's great, man, because you can sit in the water and drink beer and pee all day.
Okay.
You don't even have to get up.
That's awesome. I love it.
I love it. I had Mike Steinbach came by and visited me, man. I took him to the sandbar, and we anchored off, and I put the cooler on the back of the boat, and we were just, he had a big Hawaiian hat on, and we're just floating in the water, drinking beers, telling stories, laughing. Oh my God, we were laughing. And I think all the people around us, they were in their boats on the sandbar, and they're just like, what is wrong with those guys? We had a lot of fun.
Perfectly fine. You know what? I'm going to look forward to that. I'm going to put it in my calendar. I'm coming to visit you. We're going out on the boat, drinking beer. I love it.
Dude, boat, we go fishing.
My cheeks ache right now. I've been smiling so much. Oh my God. Cool, all right, brother. Well, I will catch you later. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And best of luck with the podcast, man. I hope this is a great thing, man. I love listening to them. So
cool. Thanks, brother.
All right, bro.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here. Go. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Real ResQ podcast. Please take a minute to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. I'm pulling chocks and taking off. But before I go, if anyone out there has a rescue story they would be willing to share, I would be humbled and honored to have you on as a guest. Or if you have any questions about rescue or anything else we talk about here, send an email to jason@therealresq.com. That's Jason at TheRealResQ.com. You can also check us out on our web pages, therealresq.com, our Facebook page, and our Instagram page @TheRealResQ. Again, a special thank you to all of you staying on the watch today. Always remember, when that SAR alarm goes off, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. Until next time, fly safe and swim hard.